The Bitcoin price reclaims over $90,000 per coin for the first time in weeks. Will we see 100K by May? What's really causing this rally? And watch today's whole video for some pretty big altcoin news. But just in, Bitcoin retakes $90,000 as the IMF forecasts higher US inflation and lower global economic growth. This is significant because it shows the start of the decoupling from tech stocks from the traditional market. Bitcoin rallying despite projected lower global economic growth. This is a signal. Many traditional news sites are pointing this out, educating the public on why Bitcoin has value. Bitcoin acts like a safe haven, says Bloomberg. And why is this? Why this narrative now? Well, it's because Bitcoin doesn't have earnings. It doesn't have a company or a government that's slowing the growth, that has slowed growth. The largest financial market in the world, America, the major companies, the stalwarts of the American economy, are going to see less earnings in Q1, probably even Q2 of this year. I mean, that is not up for debate. The slowing of the economy is happening. It's being forced by these global tariffs and this trade war. Bitcoin doesn't have earnings. In fact, it's sort of being seen as a hedge against all this fighting from all these different governments. Bitcoin is that breath of fresh air.
Obvious and easy narrative would be that we're talking about Fed independence today, so Bitcoin is kind of acting as that hedge against political uncertainty. But I also think that it's not just enthusiasm, it's also exhaustion. You're seeing people, investors wanting to, get back into risk, but just maybe not the type of risk that's tied to earnings or Fed policy.
You got a quick thought?
I do. Look, you've got a president who's very interested, and his family's very interested in Bitcoin doing well, and crypto doing well. And I think you're close to regulation or some positive announcements on policy, and that's what's driving it.
Also, Blackrock clientele are buying. Spot BTC exchange-traded funds scored $381 million in net inflows. Institutions buying the dip, the largest single-day cash influx since late January, in another sign of Bitcoin's demand. So this is why you subscribe to Altcoin Daily, to stay up to date on the daily news for an edge investing in crypto. And as of this morning, there are over 1,000 ETFs trading, and BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF IBIT is number 4 out of all ETFs, with thus far $1.9 billion in volume in 2 hours. And just understanding the data in the last week, 11 different publicly traded companies increased their Bitcoin hodl positions. We have a Japanese publicly traded company that joined the list of companies that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And right now, the top 75 companies hodl more than 711,000 Bitcoin. Japan is buying. America is buying. BlackRock is buying. And let's take a look at the technical analysis and understand what the market is telling us. Because right now, the funding rate for Bitcoin trading is negative. From a market structure perspective, the average perpetual funding rate across exchanges is currently negative. What does that mean to you? Well, perpetual funding rates reflect the cost of holding long or short positions in futures markets. When the rate is negative, it means short sellers are paying long holders to maintain their positions, a setup that can accelerate price moves higher because shorts are forced to cover their positions in what's known as a short squeeze, meaning it's costing money for short sellers to keep their shorts open. If we get another sudden move up, that would liquidate a lot of short positions and cause a cascade of short liquidations, sending price higher, because there's around $5 billion. There's a $5 billion liquidation wall sitting around $95,000. Let's talk about the latest altcoin news, the latest Solana news. Of course, when altcoin season, much of that is going to come down to Jerome Powell and his monetary policy. The last thing I do want to say about Bitcoin, and again, this is checking back in on the global M2 offset by about 84 weeks. There's been about an 80% correlation for Bitcoin's price versus global liquidity in Bitcoin's history, an 80% correlation. And global M2 money supply shows where the Bitcoin price is headed next, and it's $100,000 per coin. Just as a reminder, Bitcoin price lags global liquidity, you could say by 8 weeks at the very earliest or 12 weeks at the very latest. This is now set to the earliness. I think that's about 10 weeks. If we check this back to 108, we saw that this just updated. And either way, we either have about another week of sideways action if we go the 108, or we should be headed up immediately if we're offset by 84 days. Either way, Bitcoin's only headed in one direction if the correlation holds. And this projected bull trend is expected to continue through Q2 2025 and into early Q3 around May to June. And really two big reasons that I see that I do put a lot of credit into this is because where we are with technicals and just where we are global M2 money supply. You cannot deny global M2, the correlation is a real thing, at least based on history. Now you could say this time will be different because things are happening in the world that we've never seen before, Bitcoin has never seen before, always a possibility. But turning on the 50-day and the 200-day, we know the death cross for Bitcoin just happened. Bitcoin historically tanks into the death cross. It's a trailing indicator. We saw this again right here. Bitcoin tanked into the death cross and we rallied off it. Death cross rally. Does not mean we won't eventually come back down. We've seen that throughout history as well. But a post-death cross rally was happening either way. We needed this relief.
There's one thing I want to show you really quick, and it relates to the death cross that Bitcoin just had. One of the things that we've noted is that the last 2 years, the low that we got after these deep corrections occurred right when the death cross occurred, right? So if you look at 2023, you can see that there's a low when the death cross occurred. If you look at 2024, right, there was a low set when the death cross occurred. And so you can see that so far this year, right when that death cross occurred, right, we got that low. So what we're in right now is sort of like this death cross rally.
And also with a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, which started about 10 days ago, there's really no reason to expect a downside shock, a downside scare like we saw just with those Trump reciprocal tariffs anytime in the near future, at least for at least half of the 90 days. The VIX, which is volatility, hit 60 only 5 times in 35 years, meaning only 5 times have we seen this amount of extreme fear of uncertainty. Afterwards, the market was generally better 6 to 12 months later because the worst feeling got priced in by the market at those peaks. As a result, Trump softens, the ECB cuts, China stimulates, odds favor a better future, or at least we're not going to see as much fear and uncertainty as we saw when markets tanked about a week ago, a little more, on those reciprocal tariffs. I mention all this to say, because as a Bitcoin investor, as a crypto investor, I want to stay informed. So whether it's because of the M2 rallying, or whether this is just the death cross rally, the death cross rally that we've seen many times when a Bitcoin death cross has occurred, I would expect this rally to do good in the short term. Of course, in the midterm, long, but really midterm, it does all depend on whether the Federal Reserve Chair is willing to cut. Because right now, we are seeing data in dangerous territory. Unemployment right now is approaching COVID levels. Looking at US manufacturing, 6 months ahead, new orders, it's spiraling down worse or not seen since the 2008 crisis, meaning no reason for rally not to continue in the short term, but medium term, it all comes down to the Fed. The 2025 biggest altcoin season lies in this man's hands. The good news is that his term ends, doesn't even have to be fired. His term ends in 2026, mid-2026, meaning Trump can appoint somebody new. Right now we're in Bitcoin season. Altcoin season doesn't have to happen then, but altcoin season has no chance of happening until the Fed eases financial markets and cuts. Of course, when in doubt, zoom out. And historically, where altcoins are right now, historically, it's a great time to buy. Because you want to sell altcoins during altcoin season. That's when you want to sell. You want to buy when altcoins are low during Bitcoin season. Let's talk about recent altcoin news. But if you've made it this far in today's video and you like getting daily updates on the crypto market that gives you an edge investing in crypto, just through the daily updates, taking one video a day to learn. Join the almost 1.6 million subscribers in the Altcoin Daily Army, completely free, costs you nothing. Join this army. And the news today is this: Paul Atkins, who is the new SEC chair, who is loosely linked to RSR token, the token rises 13% after Coinbase listing. So just as a reminder, here's the token right here, reserve rights. The chart looks just like every other token, but it's interesting because it did just rally on a Coinbase listing, and it is loosely linked to the current SEC chair. A governance token for the Reserve Protocol stablecoin, launched by a firm previously advised by sworn-in SEC Chair Paul Atkins, has surged 13% after Coinbase announced it is about to list the token. Atkins was an early advisor for the stablecoin firm around the time it launched in 2019, according to the Reserve Protocol CEO, Nevin Freeman. Of course, Paul Atkins is no longer consulting at the firm, but he at least knows about the coin. He was consulting for the firm which was behind the coin back in 2019. We also have news for gaming altcoin Revenge. As a reminder, I'm an advisor ambassador for Everreach Labs, the company behind Revenge. But Revenge is now number 10 most wish-listed game on Epic Games, showing just an incredible community. Number 10 wish-listed right here. And of course, the game will be available in Q2 2025. And as of a few days ago, achievement unlocked, Revenge is now officially on the Twitch playable category, meaning for the millions of active users on Twitch, we can see the Everreach games and we'll be able to play it and integrate it with Twitch. And just for the Altcoin Daily Army, get an exclusive early look at game Revenge on Twitch. Cool to see the growth with crypto gaming. And big news for Solana, Mike Novogratz's Galaxy Digital swaps $100 million in ETH for Sol per the on-chain data. According to Wu Blockchain, on-chain data suggests that Galaxy has swapped out a considerable amount of its Ethereum holdings for Sol. Over the last 2 weeks, Galaxy has transferred over 65,000 ETH, or about $105 million, to Binance, and has withdrawn over 752,000 Solana, approximately $98 million worth, showing, if nothing else, Mike Novogratz and his firm are a little more bullish on Sol versus ETH. Later this year, if anybody wants to hang out, have a drink, talk Bitcoin, my brother and I will be speaking at Bitcoin Conference 2025 in May in Las Vegas. Use code ALTCOINDAILY for 10% off your ticket, link down below, and like the video if you feel you got value in today's video. Like the video. See you tomorrow.